I am staring at these comments and something just broke inside me. 58 people took the time to write about what they are seeing happen in America right now. And you know what the most disturbing pattern is? It's not the anger. It's not even the fear. It's the exhaustion in every third comment. People who've watched so many lines get crossed that they starting to wonder if lines even matter anymore. Let me tell you what I found in these comments because I think it reveals something we are all feeling but maybe haven to put into words yet. About 35% of these comments express pure frustration with the lack of consequences. Not anger at Trump's actions necessarily, but rage at the system that keeps letting him walk. One person wrote something that stopped me cold. They said Trump has gotten away with fraud, sexual assault, association with a pedo ring, contempt of court, war crimes, and he suffers no consequences. He is rewarded with the presidency twice and grifting millions off American taxpayers. Insanity. That word. Insanity. It appeared in different forms across maybe 40% of the comments. Then there's another 20% asking variations of the same question. Why can't anything be done? Why aren't they being removed? How is Trump still in power? These aren't rhetorical questions. These are people genuinely confused about how the system works anymore, or if it works at all. But here's what really got me. About 15% of these comments are from people reporting what they are seeing on the ground. Someone in New Mexico talking about their girlfriend in Phoenix watching ICE operations that sound like something out of a dystopian film. Body bags, pepper spray on babies, and they re-asking, is anybody going to talk about it? I think we need to talk about it. All of it. This is my analysis. I could be wrong about what I'm seeing, but I've been watching this administration for 10 days now, and I'm starting to see a pattern that terrifies me more than any single action they've taken. Let me start with what actually happened, because the facts matter even when they make us want to scream. A federal judge just issued a ruling that, from what I can see, appears to be an attempt to hold the Trump administration accountable for defying a previous court order. The details involve Venezuelan deportations, due process violations, and what looks like the administration simply ignoring judicial authority. Now, before I go any further, I need to say something. I'm about to make some connections that might sound extreme. I am going to show you patterns that when I first saw them, I thought maybe I was overreacting. But I've spent 3 days reading these comments, cross-referencing news reports, and talking to people who know more about constitutional law than I do. And I don't think I'm overreacting anymore. Here's the thing about defying court orders. It's not like breaking a regular law. When you defy a judge, you are not just saying the rule is wrong. You are saying the entire system of rules doesn't apply to you. You are saying that the courts, one of the 3 co-equal branches of government, have no power over you. And if the courts have no power, then what exactly is stopping you from doing anything you want? Let me tell you what I think is happening, and then you can decide if I'm connecting dots that aren't there or if you're seeing what I am seeing. I believe the Trump administration is systematically testing which institutions will actually enforce their authority. They were not doing this randomly. They were doing it strategically. They defy a court order, they wait to see what happens, and if nothing happens or if the consequences are minimal, they move to the next test. Think about it. The judge issues a ruling. The administration ignores it. The judge issues another ruling saying you ignored the first one. The administration makes excuses. The dog ate my homework. We reworking on it. There was confusion. Marco Rubio stands up there and, from what multiple reports indicate, just lies about the situation. And then what? One commenter nailed it. They said, where is the effing criminal contempt already? Maybe if he had held them in contempt when they first disobeyed the court order, it might not have taken this effing long. That question haunts me. Because they rewrite. We have a mechanism for this. When someone defies a court order, judges can hold them in contempt. They can impose fines. They can, in theory, even jail people for contempt of court. We have the tools. So why aren't we using them? And here's where I need you to really listen, because this is the part that keeps me up at night. I think the judiciary is terrified. Not physically terrified, but institutionally terrified. They were looking at an administration that has shown repeatedly that it does not respect institutional norms. They re-looking at a Supreme Court that has been captured by partisan ideology. They re-looking at a Republican Congress that has demonstrated it will not hold Trump accountable for anything. And they re-asking themselves, what happens if I hold them in contempt and nobody enforces it? Because that's the nightmare scenario for judicial authority. The moment a judge issues a ruling and the executive branch just shrugs and walks away, the judiciary loses all power. Not just in that case, in every case going forward. If Trump can ignore a federal judge with no consequences, why would anyone else respect judicial authority? So the judges are moving slowly, carefully, building the record, documenting every violation, making the defiance so clear that when they finally do act, nobody can claim it was political. But while they rebuilding that perfect case, people are suffering. The commenter from New Mexico whose girlfriend is in Phoenix, isn't he talking about abstract legal principles? They talking about body bags, pepper spray on babies, ICE operations that sound like military raids. And here's what makes me want to scream. We are 10 days in. 10 days. If this is what is happening after 10 days, where are we going to be in 6 months? A year? 4 years? One person wrote, "We are in the twilight zone with Trump." And honestly, that might be the most accurate description I've heard. Because the twilight zone wasn't as scary because monsters were real. It was scary because normal reality stopped making sense. The rules you thought governed the world just stopped applying. Let me connect something that I haven't seen anyone else talking about. Multiple commenters mentioned the Venezuela situation specifically. Trump made a deal with Venezuela's new dictator to imprison American citizens. There's mention of Trump taking an oil tanker for money, $200 million deposited in Qatar. Trump said in a press conference that oil executives are going to Venezuela. Now, I can confirm every detail of these claims, but here's what we know for certain. The Trump administration deported people to Venezuela in violation of a court order that said they had a right to due process first. Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, stood in front of cameras and made claims about the situation that multiple sources indicate were false. And one commenter asked a question that I think gets to the heart of why this matters so much. They asked, how do we know they got there? Are these people still alive? Think about that question for a second. We at a point where American citizens are asking whether people deported by their own government are still alive. That is not a question you ask about a functioning democracy. That is a question you ask about an authoritarian regime. And maybe I'm wrong about this. Maybe there are perfectly innocent explanations for everything. Maybe the administration is just chaotic and disorganized and not deliberately testing the limits of power. But then I read the comment about the comparison to Jimmy Carter. Remember when Republicans lost their minds about Jimmy Carter making money from his peanut farm? The man put his peanut farm in a blind trust because there were concerns about conflicts of interest. His peanut farm. And now we have Trump, who has had financial entanglements around the world, who pardoned the biggest drug dealer in the world, according to one commenter, who is allegedly making deals involving oil in Venezuela and $200 million in Qatar, and the same Republicans who crucified Carter over peanuts are silent. That's not hypocrisy. Hypocrisy is when you fail to live up to your own standards. This is something else. This is the deliberate abandonment of standards entirely when they become inconvenient. Here's what I think that signals. I think the Republican Party has made a decision. They've decided that power matters more than principles, and that as long as Trump gives them what they want, they will enable anything, any violation of law, any defiance of courts, any authoritarian impulse, and that's how democracies die. Not with a coup, not with tanks in the streets, but with 1,000 small surrenders, each institution backing down from confrontation, each norm violated without consequence, each line crossed until people stop believing lines exist. One commenter used a word that I think captures what we reliving through: kakistocracy. Government by the worst people, the least competent, the most corrupt, the most cruel. And you know what is really disturbing? About 10% of the comments express a sense of helplessness. They were asking, can anything be done? How is Trump still in power? I want to talk about that question because I think it's the wrong question, and understanding why matters. Trump is in power because 77 million people voted for him. He won the election. We can debate whether the information environment was fair, whether voter suppression played a role, whether foreign interference tipped the scales. But at the end of the day, he won under the rules we have. So the question isn't how is he in power? The question is, what are the limits on that power? And what I am seeing is an administration that is trying to find out if there are any limits at all. The courts say you can deport people without due process. The administration does it anyway. What happens? Well, the courts issue another ruling. And the administration ignores that too. and we wait to see if there are any actual consequences. Meanwhile, several commenters are pointing out what's happening at the state level. ICE operations in Arizona, New Mexico, and apparently expanding to Maine, Vermont, Massachusetts. One person described it as a shit show in Phoenix right now. And here's the question nobody in power seems to be asking. If you give federal agents the power to round up people based on appearance or accent or walking on the cracks in the pavement, as one commenter sarcastically put it, what prevents that power from being turned on anyone? You think it's only about immigration? You think it stops there? Here's what history teaches us. Every authoritarian movement starts by targeting a specific group. They not like us. They dangerous. They criminals. Look, this one was wearing the wrong colored hat. That one smelled of foreign food. That one was walking around with an offensive wife. I am reading those examples and they sound absurd, right? Except commenters are pointing out that the justifications being used are essentially that absurd. The Department of Justice evidence mentioned in one comment. He looked at me in a funny way. He smelled of foreign food. Once you establish that the government can round people up based on vibes and hunches and suspicions, you've established a principle that can be applied to anyone. Today, it is immigrants. Tomorrow, it is political dissidents. Next week, it is journalists. Next month, it is you. And I know that sounds extreme. I know some of you are thinking, he is being hysterical, this is America, that can happen here. But I'm looking at what's already happening. 10 days in, body bags in Arizona, babies being pepper sprayed, people deported without due process, court orders ignored. And I am asking myself, if this is day 10, what is day 100 going to look like? Several commenters brought up accountability. Trump needs to be impeached. Start locking these effing traitors up. The Orange Caligula should have been in prison a long time ago. And I understand that rage. I feel it too. But here's what I've realized. Impeachment requires Congress. Prison requires enforcement. Everything requires institutions that are willing to act. And what I am seeing is institutions that are paralyzed. The courts are afraid to act decisively because they know the executive branch might just ignore them. Congress is controlled by people who have decided Trump can do no wrong. The Supreme Court has already shown it will bend over backwards to protect him. The Justice Department has been captured by loyalists. So what do? One commenter said something that really struck me. They said, if only judges had the power to hold those who lie in court, lie to the court, fail to follow a judgment accountable. If only the judiciary was a separate but equal branch of government. If only. That sarcasm cuts deep, because they are pointing out that we theoretically have all the mechanisms we need. Separation of powers, checks and balances, judicial independence. We learned about it in school. It's supposed to protect us, but it only works if people are willing to use their power. And right now, I am seeing a lot of people with power choosing not to use it. The judge in this case appears to be trying. From what I can see, they are building a record of defiance that should result in serious consequences. But will it? Or will this be like everything else? A ruling that gets appealed, delayed, ignored, and eventually forgotten while the administration moves on to the next violation? I want to believe the system will hold. I want to believe that there are still enough people in positions of authority who will say, no, this far and no further. But I'm also watching what's happening in real time, and I am not seeing it yet. Here's what gives me a tiny bit of hope, and I'll be honest, it's not much. The commenters themselves. About 20% of these comments express determination. Good for the judge, it's about time somebody stopped their games. I hope they were charged on the state level only where Trump cannot pardon. Someone please stop Trump. These aren't people giving up. These are people looking for any avenue, any mechanism, any authority that might still work, and that matters. Because ultimately, the only thing that stops authoritarianism is people refusing to accept it. Not just in grand gestures, but in small resistances. Judges who keep issuing rulings even when they re-ignored. Lawyers who keep filing cases. Journalists who keep reporting. Citizens who keep calling their representatives, protesting, voting, speaking up. One person said, MAGA gets so many boos it almost feels like Halloween. And you know what? Good. Boo them. Make them uncomfortable. Make them know that what they redoing is not normal, not acceptable, not okay. Because here is what I think is the real test we refacing. It's not whether Trump will respect the law. We know he won T. The question is whether enough other people will respect the law, will use their power, will stand up, to make his disrespect costly. And right now, I honestly don't know the answer to that question. What I do know is this. We re 10 days into an administration that is already defying courts, allegedly making deals with dictators, conducting ICE raids that sound like military operations, and testing every limit on presidential power. And the response so far has been more court rulings that get ignored, strongly worded statements, outrage on social media. That's not enough. It's nowhere near enough. I'm going to tell you what I am doing, and then I am going to ask you to think about what you are going to do. I am documenting everything, every court case, every defied ruling, every alleged violation, because when this is over, however it ends, we need a record. We need people to know what happened, what was tried, what failed, and why. I am calling my representatives, not once, regularly. I am telling them that I expect them to use every tool they have to defend the rule of law. And when they don't, I am documenting that too. I am supporting organizations that are fighting back in court. The ACLU, the Southern Poverty Law Center, state attorney generals who are willing to stand up. They need resources and they need public support. And I am talking about this loudly, repeatedly, even when it feels futile. Because silence is what authoritarians count on. They count on people getting tired, getting overwhelmed, giving up. Now, what are you going to do? You can call your representatives. You can support legal organizations. You can show up to protests. You can document what you are seeing in your community. You can have conversations with family members who voted for this and ask them if this is really what they wanted. Or you can do something smaller. You can refuse to let this feel normal. You can keep calling it out. You can boo them, as that commenter said. You can make sure that every person enabling this knows that history is watching and you are watching. Because here's the thing. We not in the twilight zone. This is real. This is happening. And it's happening because enough people are letting it happen. The judge who issued this ruling, they not letting it happen. They doing their job, building the record, trying to hold the line. The question is, will anyone back them up? Will Congress? Will other judges? Will law enforcement? Will we? I can answer that question for everyone. I can only answer it for myself. I am not giving up. I am not accepting this as normal. I am not going to stop documenting, protesting, calling, writing, and screaming about what I am seeing. And I hope you won't either. Because 10 days in, we were already seeing body bags and pepper spray and defied court orders and alleged deals with dictators. If we don't draw a line now, if we don't make this costly now, where are we going to be in 4 years? I don't want to find out. And I don't think you do either. So yeah, I am angry. I am exhausted. I am terrified. But I am also paying attention. And I am not going